Well, we'll be continuing to track that story. Just taking a quick interlude from what Poonam was discussing just a short while ago. We are joined by the MD and CEO of the National Stock Exchange of India, Ashish Kumar Chauhan, the NSE. Mr. Chauhan, thank you very much for speaking to us here on CNN News 18 and to me. We're seeing, obviously, the fallout of what now seems to be an entrenched face-off between India and the United States over what many people believe is Trump's tariff tyranny. Now, Mr. Chauhan, first of all, how are the markets reacting to this? We are seeing volatility, but it is very well managed. In certain sectors, are those more vulnerable? Why is it that we haven't seen the kind of mayhem we saw in America, for instance, on Wall Street when Trump announced tariffs?
No, in a way, you are right that there is expectations vis-a-vis reality. See, whenever a news comes, first time, like when COVID came first time, markets went down by 40%. But after that new news of COVID, nothing much happened, right? Similarly, when Mr. Trump took over in late January and he started making noise, there was an expectation that, and he started making noise, that's where the markets reacted a lot. But later on, whatever he says is largely priced. Whatever is not priced is where you see the impact. And today you have seen India going down 1%, which is what in some ways you can say the impact of the Trump tariff. But he's also doing a lot of to and fro. He does something and then he takes it back and then does something else. And the other part is that it's not doing only for India. Because we are the affected party, we think he's doing it with India, but he's actually playing this with everyone else. I mean, he's not what I call, he's troubling everyone equally or slightly, I mean, differently, but broadly on the same front, whether it's EU or Japan or Korea, which have been their staunchest allies, in fact, in some ways subordinates for so many years, almost 70, 80 years, and they have been treated badly, and that's where, in some ways, that's his way of doing things. He does trash talks, but overall, he's a person in search of a deal, right?
Right.
So he's trying to do this for all his deals, and that's what we need to, and market understands this.
Well, first, of course, we have about 21.
Next time,
yes, we have 3 weeks in which to arrive at some sort of a deal. India has already landed a first strike by deciding to, at some level or the other, not advance with some of the arms-related transactions with the United States. You might have just seen that we broke that story just a short while back. It was reported by Reuters, but I just want to bring you in on this because I want you to explain to the viewer which sectors on the stock markets are perhaps more exposed to these tariffs. Which are these areas?
See, in a way, if you look at it, India's total exports basket to US is in some ways largely dependent on services, which is not in the play. So all the IT companies and all the services we provide, BPOs and other things, they are not in the play. So in some ways, what we do as merchandise exports are the only thing that are in play. The GCCs, which is becoming a very large set of employers, almost 2,500 to 3,000 large setups of all the US companies and European companies setting up their base in India to do intellectual work. Again, that's not in the play because that's only a salary. So these two things which have been actually ensuring that India grows over last 30 years are both not in the play. There is nothing, no talk of tariffs on that, and there is one reason because we don't discuss. The services is actually US is better and US is exporting on net basis, so that's why he's not touching tariffs, and that's why my understanding is today is not touching India's services part. Now coming to the merchandise, currently the crude part, crude oil and its derivatives, that's the petrol and diesel and all, are currently not in that, and similarly pharmaceuticals are not in that. That doesn't mean tomorrow it may not come, but broadly large part of our export market is not covered in that, but that's done by larger players including electronics with the iPhone and all. But the smaller ones, the SMEs and medium companies including textiles and other things, they get affected if this 50% comes into play. But even at 25%, lot of exporters have told me that it's going to be very tough. Although the supply chains are not easy to break, it will take some time, but finally this will have an impact of quite substantial amounts on the job creation and other things, and that's what we were expecting in terms of going forward with this kind of bilaterals, and we were hoping that the bilaterals with US goes better than other countries, but currently we are in a situation which is slightly difficult. I'm sure our our government will resolve it in some ways with US, which is win-win for both.
What would be a win-win? What would be a win-win situation for the stock markets? Let me ask you that directly. And also, foreign institution investors often react swiftly in scenarios like this when there is the expectation of a trade shock. Are you seeing net FII outflows intensify since the tariff announcement, and how might this impact NSE liquidity and depth in the near term?
In fact, FIIs have, or what we call now FPIs, have been particularly sanguine about Indian markets. The outflow post announcement, even from March, April onwards, has not been that great, and that's what is also surprised. But also the fact that US dollar itself is losing value. It's almost gone down by 10% compared to the other markets, and people feel that the first quarter of US after the announcement of tariffs was actually about the inventory being sold, the old inventories being sort of capped and sold. The actual inflation will start coming in, hitting US markets probably this quarter onwards, when the new tariffs actually start getting applied to new material which comes into US. And so there are many imponderables, and most people who invest in India invest in high-tech companies, pharmaceuticals and other things, which are actually very, very good in terms of protecting their stuff, but also that services are not even in the play. So broadly speaking, some portion is about the India play, which is India's own domestic consumption, e-commerce and all, which is doing very well. The services are going to actually increase because of the AI and other things in India. The jobs and number of jobs are going to increase, and similarly GCCs are going to create more jobs. So overall, we do not see that exodus which people predict or used to predict in earlier days, because this is a different situation. Very specific sectors might get affected, and if we are able to create a framework where we are comparable with other similar competition or better in terms of the manpower oriented activities or manufacturing, which we want to now sort of claim.
So what you're saying, Mr. Chauhan, net, what you're saying is that there's not going to be a mass FDI outflow. That's what you're saying, and that's very reassuring. That's what you're saying, right?
We have not seen any, we have not seen that type of thing.
So let me ask you, because you touched upon a win-win deal. So in your view, what role should India's policy response, whether through counter tariffs, trade diversification or diplomatic channels, play in restoring market confidence? What are you looking at? Today we've hit back by saying that, look, we're not going to procure certain defense systems from the United States. What else are you looking at?
For me, those are transactional issues, and US is negotiating on transaction basis rather than relationship basis, and we have to deal with that attitude, that way of doing things, that framework of US, which was literally the ruler of the world, unipolar ruler, is now coming under multipolar framework, and they are feeling some sort of a threat in their hegemony, if you say. And that's where, for me, we have to keep all this in account, take into account, and also the fact that if little give and take, finally we need to solve this, because China clearly is exporting, literally exporting everything that they have now $1.2 trillion of customs surplus and $2 trillion of manufacturing surplus as per the new numbers. And so they are literally increasing their exports. In that context, we need markets which are able to absorb our services but also our goods compared to China, and that's where we need to somehow solve this kind of whatever way we can do that in a more amicable way. I would say we should go ahead.
So diversification is the need of the hour, whether it is market diversification for our exports or product diversification to feed exports. Thank you, Mr. Chauhan. This has been enlightening. Thank you very much for speaking to us. We leave it at this, viewers. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't go away.